Alright, it's your man Brett from the Skateboarding Show, here with another installment of reading from the Ching, an ancient Chinese text from about 2,500 years ago, for author Lao Tzu, who was a contemporary of Confucius. Feel free to do your own research into Taoism, as it's called, although it's often written with a T at the beginning. But I believe it's pronounced with a D. I'm here reading the different chapters from the book. They're in order. This is chapter 2 that I'm about to read, so if you are interested, then by all means, I've done chapter 1, by all means go and read that, if go and listen to that if you want to. I'm videoing this and audibly recording it, so if you're listening to or watching one or the other, you're not missing out on anything from the other one. So there's nothing on offer in the other version that's not here. So yes, as I say, having done chapter 1, let's do chapter 2 now. And the format is that I read it out, I'm going to talk about it and connect it to skateboarding, more importantly. That's what I'm doing here. Then read it out again and then sign off. So, chapter 2. In the world, when all know that the action of beauty is beautiful, then ugliness ensues. When all know that the action of good is goodness, then not good ensues. Therefore, being and non-being create each other. Difficult and easy complete each other. Long and short contrast each other. High and low lean on each other. Tone and voice harmonize each other. Before and after follow each other. Thus the sage lives by using non-action in his doings, in his duties, and practicing no talking in his teachings. The 10,000 creatures arise but do not have a beginning. Creating but not possessing, acting but not concerned with the results, accomplishing tasks but not dwelling on them. Now, only because there is no dwelling, thus the results do not depart. So, in the world when all know that the action of beauty is beautiful, then ugliness arises. When all know that the action of good is goodness, then not good ensues. My basic interpretation of this is that when something exists, there's the possibility of not that thing. So the two examples given are when beauty exists, then something else is called ugly, or the possibility of ugliness exists. When all know that the action of goodness, so when there's goodness, there's not goodness. When something exists, then there's the possibility of not that thing, right? And then it goes on to describe a few other different things, which I kind of like that I don't really think it's laboring the point, but therefore being and non-being create each other. Being and something not being that it come into existence because of them both existing, if you see what I mean. Difficult and easy complete each other. Something's only difficult because something else is easy. Now, long and short contrast, high and low lean on each other, tone and voice harmonize before. Okay, so how does that first bit relate to skateboarding? Well, first of all, there's the reality that there is skateboarding, and so that creates the possibility that there's something that is not skateboarding. Now in chapter 1 we talked about the idea that if skateboarding exists and you think you know what it is, then maybe you haven't grasped the subtle reality, because the first chapter talks about the dough that can be named is not the ever constant dough. So the skateboarding that can be named is not the ever constant. That's my take on it. That's my connection. If you think you know what skateboarding is, you haven't really grasped the ever constant subtle beauty of skateboarding, which is very hard to grasp It also talked about the idea that the more you try to grasp it, the more it goes. So in the world when all know what the action of skateboarding is, then non-skateboarding ensues. Now why is that important? Maybe it isn't. Maybe it isn't. Maybe none of this is important. Maybe this is just a fanciful thing that I'm doing just because I like this bit of philosophy and I like skateboarding, and I think there's a connection between the two. But what it does mean is that but maybe nothing's important, only the things we give importance to. Because when something's important, then it allows for the possibility of something else to not be important. Skateboarding is a lifestyle. Skateboarding to me is a lifestyle. It's something that I care about. The action of it, the culture of it, are all things that I think are really amazing. And I choose to care about it because of how amazing I think it is. So by choosing to care about it and by choosing to acknowledge how amazing it is, I recognize that other things are not important. Because you know, when we all know the action of, when we all know that something is important, then it brings up the possibility that something's not important. There are things also in skateboarding that define each other just by their very nature. So I mean, on a very surface level, this like long and short contrast each other. You know, but size, there's something about size, but it's very surface level. I'm not even sure if I want to go in. A high air is defined by a very low air just out of the coping. A small ramp is defined by the fact that it's small compared to a big ramp. These are very surface level things. What is it about the essence of skateboarding? Well, perhaps simply that all the time skateboarding exists, there's the possibility of non-skateboarding and not skateboarding. And so the not skateboarding stuff helps to define what skateboarding is, although we've also just discussed that actually it's hard to define what skateboarding is. It's hard to pin that down, but that's okay, that's all right. Thus the sage lives by using non-action in his duties and practicing no talking in his teachings. Practicing no talking in his teachings and by using non-action in his duties. So I think what they're getting at here is, and then later on it goes on to talk about creating but not possessing, acting but not concerned with the results, accomplishing tasks but not dwelling on them. I think this bit's a little bit easier to talk about. Have you ever seen Alex Halford or Jordan Thackeray do skateboarding? Because there is a perfect example of using non-action, or what appears to be non-action, right? They are doing stuff. They are without a doubt doing stuff. Jake Nuglord from Newquay is another example. Tom Penny is another example, right? People who look like they're not really doing anything, but clearly they are. Hosoi, actually, and again, I'm not old enough to have been around in the golden age of like Hosoi, but I've seen some of the footage from the 80s of Hosoi. Hosoi didn't look like he was doing skateboarding or putting effort into doing skateboarding. He didn't look like he looked like he was using non-action. He looked like he was just allowing it to flow through him. Yeah, Thackeray does that, and Halford do that. They both do that, and Jake from Newquay does it, and Tom Penny's done it, and Hosoi's done it. It looks like they're just allowing the skateboarding to come through. It looks like they've taken themselves out of the way, and they're just like somehow just letting it flow through them. Hosoi would, it always looked to me like Hosoi didn't land a trick. It always looked to me like he just melded back into the ramp. He just flowed back in. You know, landing would have required like a jolt, like some sort of effort. He wasn't putting effort in. You know, Laith Sami is one of the few people who can do flatland skateboarding and make it look effortless and make it look beautiful as well, but effortless. You know, and there's a lot of effort required to pop your board up off the floor, and cleanly and nicely and smoothly like he does, but it looks effortless. It looks like he is the sage who lives by using non-action in his duties and practicing no talking in his teachings. He's just doing it. He just is it. Laith is just it when he does. Not it as in the cool thing, but it's just happening through him. It looks like Thackeray isn't doing skateboarding, he's just allowing the skateboarding to come through him. It's the only way to describe it. I don't know what other way to describe it. I know I've said that like 3-4 times now, but it looks like he's not. I know he is putting in effort. I've talked to him about it. I've talked to Jake about it, and they say they're putting in effort, but the way it looks and the way it flows looks like it's just happening. It's just happening. It just is. It is happening with non-action. The 10,000 creatures arise but do not have a beginning, creating but not possessing, acting but not concerned with the results, accomplishing tasks but not dwelling on them. Again, that applies to all those people that I've just mentioned there. What is it, like 5 of them, like Thackeray, Halford, Jake from Nuki, Tom Penny and Hassoy, right? Creating but not possessing. They're over it. It's done. It's done. They don't dwell on it. They don't dwell on it. Acting but not concerned with the result. They might. Halford is a classic example of that. He lands it, maybe he doesn't land it. If he doesn't land it, he steps back on, tries it again, or does something different, or moves on to something else, because he's not possessing it. He doesn't care whether in a good way, in a positive way, he doesn't care whether he lands it or not. He's on to the next trick already. He's on to the next thing already. The skateboarding's coming through him. He hasn't got time to stop and go back and, or let's try that again. Like, it doesn't matter. It's all right. It's okay. There's plenty more skateboarding. I'm just a vessel to allow this eternal skateboarding to come through. He's not possessing it. He's accomplishing tasks but not dwelling on them. Those people are the sages who are not dwelling on it. They didn't land the trick, doesn't matter. There's a whole infinite source of skateboarding to come through them. Yeah, so it doesn't matter, it's fine. Let's just move on. Now, only because there is no dwelling, thus the results do not depart. So ironically, without putting a load of effort in, by just allowing the skateboarding to come through them, people like those 5 that I just mentioned have become legends in their own right. You know, Jake without a shadow of a doubt is a legend. Penny is a legend. All those boys down in Nuki, I've got a lot of love for them. Harry and Chaz and Jake and Josh and all those lot. They're all amazing. They're all brilliant, and they all have an element of that. They all have an element. Chaz actually looks quite effortless when he skates, actually, although a lot of power. But I digress. So, although I don't, because it's the same thing. Thus the sage lives by using non-action in his duties. So granted, the first half of that is, it's maybe that's a long way of saying the fact that skateboarding exists allows for the possibility of not skateboarding to exist, because those two things define each other. You know, what is not skateboarding defines what is skateboarding, and what is skateboarding defines what isn't skateboarding. Although, as we said in chapter 1, maybe it's hard to define those things. So, but the second half of this can really go a little bit deeper into that beautiful experience of watching people. And sometimes I'm very lucky. Recently, you know, I've got to see some of this live. I've got to see that it isn't just something that that Halford or Thackeray switch on when a camera's there. It's not like that at all. That's how they skate. It's beautiful. It's non-action. It's classic Taoism in action. You know, that is simply how they skate, and it's genuinely beautiful to watch and inspiring. It's the sort of thing that makes you go, yep, I'm going to drop in now. I want to skate now. That is beautiful. Not that I want to skate and emulate that, but I've been inspired to get on my board now. Like, wow, what a beautiful thing that I've just seen Thackeray and Halford do. Pulley has it to an extent. I'll tell you who else has it actually. Jordo Light. Something about being called Jordan, maybe, I don't know. But Jordo Light has it. He looks effortless. It has a beautiful style about him. Baz Dan has it to an extent. Now, it's not to say that people who look like they're putting in effort don't do amazing skateboarding or look beautiful. They do look wonderful. But it's a different look. It's a different thing. But what we're talking about here is practice, is using non-action, and that looks like what they're doing. And there is something about that in skateboarding. Actually, there is something about the idea that you work hard at it. You sort of train, if you will, by going out as a beginner skateboarder, repeatedly trying stuff, trying to get a feel of it, trying to get ollies, trying to get airs, trying to get grinds and slides and all these different things, and kick flips and all your different tricks, until eventually you can do those things without having to think about it too much. If you remember back to when you first were trying to learn how to ollie compared to doing it now, you don't need to put as much effort in as you did. You don't need to think about it. You don't need to work it out as much. So the sage they're referring to here is sort of like the master, the person who's mastered their art, and there's certainly something in that in skateboarding. When you master it, you don't need to put as much effort in. You still may need to put as much physical effort in, but again, even that becomes a little bit easier because you're used to it. You've made your body accustomed to it. So in the world, when all know that the action of beauty is beautiful, then ugliness ensues. When all know that the action of good is goodness, then not goodness ensues. Therefore, being and non-being create each other. Difficult and easy complete each other. Long and short contrast each other. High and low lean on each other. Tone and voice harmonize each other. Before and after follow each other. Thus the sage lives by using non-action in his duties and practicing no talking in his teachings. The 10,000 creatures arise but do not have a beginning. Creating but not possessing. Acting but not concerned with the results. Accomplishing tasks but not dwelling on them. Now, only because there is no dwelling, thus the results do not depart. I think it's those last two bits: creating but not possessing, acting but not concerned with the results, accomplishing tasks but not dwelling, thus the results do not depart. Yeah, I think there's definitely something in there. If you think about those 5 characters that I just named as examples, I'm sure there's perfectly many more other people that you can think of that have that sort of effortless style about them. And again, I'm not saying they're not putting in effort. I'm saying if you look at what they do, it looks effortless. It looks like it's flowing. It looks like they're not even doing it. It looks like the skateboarding is happening through them. And I think that's what this is trying to get at, that when you allow the way, that's what the do means, the way. When you allow the way to flow through you, then you can live by using non-action in your duties. Anyway, that's chapter 2 of the copyright-free version of the Do Dai Jing by Lao Si that I'm reading in connection with skateboarding. This has been your man Brett from the Skateboarding Show. Feel free to tune in again for another episode of this, where funnily enough I'll probably be doing chapter 3 after chapter 2. And as I say, you can either do that or you can go skateboarding. Either one is up to you, or do both. I don't mind. It's entirely, make your own decision. You know, you can live by using non-action. Thank you. Cheers. Bye-bye.